My sister leaned in at her son's first birthday party, 43 people watching, and whispered, "You couldn't give him a baby in 4 years. I gave him a son in one night." She'd just announced to every person in that backyard that my dead husband was her child's father. She had a will to prove it. My mother-in-law was already holding the boy, calling him an Ashford. My own mother was telling me to sign the papers. I looked at the forged document in my hand, looked at my sister's perfect practice tears, and I had to press my lips together to keep from laughing. Because there was something none of them knew, something my husband had kept from everyone, and it was about to destroy every lie in that room. If you've ever been deceived by your own family, hit subscribe. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from. My name is Quinn Mercer, and until 6 weeks ago, I thought the hardest thing I'd ever do was build a $12 million company from nothing. I was wrong. The hardest thing was standing in the kitchen of our Bellmead Craftsman at 3 a.m., staring at Caleb's coffee mug on the counter, the one with the cracked Vanderbilt logo, knowing he'd never pick it up again. He'd left it there the morning of the accident, a ring of dried espresso at the bottom. I couldn't wash it. I couldn't move it. Some mornings I'd pour fresh coffee into my own cup and sit across from his. Like if I just waited long enough, he'd come padding down the stairs in those ridiculous plaid pajama pants, yawning, reaching for it. He never did. Caleb and I met 8 years ago at a charity auction in downtown Nashville. I was 25, 3 months into launching a one-woman interior design operation out of my apartment, and I'd volunteered to arrange the table displays because I couldn't afford a ticket. He was 28, a financial consultant who'd just left his firm to go independent. Tall, steady eyes, the kind of man who listened like he was memorizing you. He bid $1,100 on a watercolor of the Cumberland River at sunset, then walked it directly to me. "You've been staring at this thing for 2 hours, he said. "I think it's yours." I told him he was insane. He told me he was Caleb. We had dinner the next night at a Thai place on West End that doesn't exist anymore. 6 months later, he met my family. That's when Maren entered the picture. My sister was 19 then, 6 years younger than me, with the kind of effortless beauty that made rooms rearrange themselves around her. Dark hair, sharp jawline, a laugh that carried. She walked into my parents' living room, saw Caleb standing by the fireplace, and something shifted behind her eyes. I'd seen that look before, on every boy in high school who'd wanted what someone else had, but I'd never seen it on my sister, not aimed at me. She sat next to him at dinner, touched his arm when she laughed, asked him questions about finance like she suddenly cared about index funds. When I came back from helping Mom in the kitchen, she was leaning close enough that I could smell her perfume on his collar. My mother noticed too. But not the way I'd hoped. "Oh, Maren's just friendly," Lorraine said, waving her hand like she was brushing a fly. "She's the pretty one. You know how it is." I was standing right there. Caleb told me later that Maren had whispered her phone number while I was out of the room. He showed me the napkin. He always showed me everything. That was Caleb. No secrets, no games. I told him to throw it away. He did. But Maren didn't stop. 3 weeks before the wedding, she texted Caleb at 11:47 p.m. "I keep thinking about you. Is that wrong?" He showed me immediately. I confronted Maren the next morning. She laughed, that bright, careless laugh, and flipped her hair. "Relax, sis. I was just testing him for you. You should be thanking me." I looked at my mother for support. Lorraine sighed, shook her head at me, not at Maren. "She's your sister. Don't start your marriage by creating enemies." Maren came to our wedding wearing white, not ivory, not cream. White. A spaghetti-strap dress that caught the light every time she moved. My mother said nothing. My father said nothing. Caleb squeezed my hand at the altar and whispered, "I'm only looking at you." And he was. For 11 years, he only ever looked at me. We built everything together. The company, Mercer and Holloway Design, started in our second bedroom with one client, a dentist's office in Germantown that needed new waiting room chairs. Caleb handled the books, the contracts, the vendor negotiations. I handled everything else. Within 3 years, we were doing commercial projects across Tennessee. Within 5, we'd expanded to Georgia and the Carolinas. The house, the portfolio, the reputation. All of it. Brick by brick. Late night by late night. By our 4th anniversary, the company was valued at $8.2 million, the house at $3.1 million. Investments scattered across half a dozen accounts. We had built something real. What we didn't have was a child. It wasn't for lack of trying. Year 1, hopeful. Year 2, concerned. Year 3, doctors, charts, supplements, a fertility app that sent me notifications like a cheerful little torturer every morning. Year 4, silence. The kind of silence that fills a house when a question has been asked too many times and nobody wants to hear the answer. Caleb wouldn't go to a specialist. I asked twice. The second time, he sat on the edge of our bed and stared at his hands for a long time. "If I go, and it's me," he said quietly, "my mother will never look at me the same way. Give me time. I'll handle it." I loved him, so I gave him time. And his mother, Judith Mercer, 64 years old, Brentwood address, Sunday school teacher, casserole queen of Grace Community Church, stopped asking when we'd have a baby. She started asking what was wrong with me. By our 4th anniversary, Judith had stopped asking when we'd have a baby. She'd started asking what was wrong with me. And my sister, the one who'd tried to steal my husband before I married him, was about to give her exactly the ammunition she needed. Judith Mercer never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her cruelty came wrapped in Sunday smiles and casserole dishes, and it was always aimed at me. Thanksgiving, year 2. 23 people around a table in Judith's Brentwood dining room. Turkey, cornbread stuffing, her famous sweet potato casserole. Caleb's Uncle Howard said grace, and when we all sat down, Judith placed her hand flat on my stomach in front of everyone. "Still flat," she said brightly. "Maybe next year." The table laughed. Polite, uncomfortable laughter. I laughed too. Caleb's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Neither did I. Christmas, year 3. Judith handed me a gift wrapped in silver paper with a bow. Inside, a book titled Fertility After 30, A Woman's Guide. She'd dog-eared 3 chapters. "Just a little helpful reading, dear," she said. "I saw it at the bookstore and thought of you immediately." Lorraine, who'd driven up from Murfreesboro for the holiday, leaned over my shoulder. "That's thoughtful, Judith. Quinn, you should read it." Mother's Day, year 3. Judith posted a family photo on Facebook. Caleb, Howard, the cousins, and their children, 7 grandchildren between them, and me, standing at the edge of the frame. The caption read, "Blessed with a beautiful family, praying for the day it grows even more." She tagged me. 47 comments. Most were heart emojis, a few were pity. Easter, year 4, Grace Community Church. Judith introduced me to a woman I'd never met, a new member of her Bible study group. "This is my daughter-in-law, Quinn. We're still waiting on good news." She squeezed my arm, smiled. The woman's eyes dropped to my stomach, then back up with that look. That specific look of Christian sympathy that feels like sandpaper. Caleb found me in the church parking lot afterward, sitting in the car with the engine off. "I'll talk to her," he said. "You've talked to her 9 times. She doesn't hear you." He took my hand under the console, held it tight, said nothing. There was nothing left to say. That's when Maren made her move. Not on Caleb. On Judith. She called her mother-in-law, a woman she barely knew, and poured poison directly into her ear. I didn't find out until months later, when Caleb overheard Judith on the phone repeating it to her friend Darlene at church. Maren had told Judith that before I met Caleb, I'd been a party girl. Wild. Reckless. Slept around all through her 20s, was the phrase Judith used to Darlene. Maren said she used to drink so much she'd black out. And now, well, the body remembers, doesn't it? None of it was true. Not one word. I'd spent my 20s building a business out of a second bedroom, eating ramen, falling asleep on fabric samples. The wildest thing I'd done at 23 was stay up until 2 a.m. watching HGTV. But Judith didn't need it to be true. She needed it to be useful. After Maren's call, Judith's tone shifted. The pity evaporated. In its place, something colder. She stopped looking at me like a daughter-in-law who couldn't conceive. She started looking at me like a woman who'd ruined herself and was now ruining her son. Caleb overheard her say it. He came home white-faced and told me everything. She said, "Your wife's past is catching up with her." He could barely get the words out. "Maybe you should have married someone with a cleaner history." He'd told Judith never to speak about me that way again. She agreed. To his face. Behind his back, the whispers continued. I'd hear fragments at family dinners. Catch Judith studying me with that new expression, tight-lipped, evaluating, like I was a stain on her upholstery. I wanted Caleb to get tested. If the results showed I was fine and the issue was his, maybe Judith would finally stop. But Caleb shook his head. "You don't know my mother," he said. "If it's me, she won't blame me. She'll blame you for not telling her sooner. Or she'll decide I need a different wife, one who can fix the problem. There's no winning with her, Quinn. Not with this." So I went alone, a Tuesday morning in June, 18 months before Caleb died. Nashville Women's Clinic. Dr. Nina Sandoval, reproductive endocrinologist. Every test, every scan, every lab. Results. Completely normal. Ovarian reserve, hormone levels, uterine lining. All textbook. Dr. Sandoval looked at me over her glasses and said, "Mrs. Mercer, there's nothing wrong with you. I'd recommend your husband see a specialist." I drove home with the results in a manila envelope on the passenger seat. I put them in the locked drawer of my nightstand. And I never told Caleb, because I knew what it would mean. If the problem was him, and he found out I knew, it would break something between us, something I couldn't fix. So I carried it. Alone. Then came the dinner that crossed every line. Judith invited Quinn and Caleb for Sunday supper. Nothing unusual, but Maren was there too, and she was seated next to Caleb, and Lorraine was seated next to Judith. And the conversation kept circling back to children, and family legacy, and the right woman for the right man. Caleb saw it before I did. He set his fork down mid-sentence and said, "We're leaving." We didn't speak in the car. We didn't need to. We both knew what they'd tried to do. 3 months later, Maren announced she was pregnant. She didn't know who the father was, or wouldn't say. She'd been seeing at least 3 men that year. But Lorraine called to share the news with the specific tone of a woman delivering a verdict. "At least one of my daughters can give me a grandchild." Maren's son was born on a Tuesday in October. 8 pounds, 2 ounces, brown eyes, and a full head of dark hair. I held him in the hospital. This tiny, perfect boy who had done nothing wrong. I loved him instantly. And I had no idea that in 14 months, my sister would use him as a weapon to destroy everything I had. Caleb died on a Wednesday night. By Friday, my sister was already making plans for his money. He called me at 10:31 p.m. from the car. I was in the living room reviewing a client proposal. A boutique hotel lobby in East Nashville. All warm brass and reclaimed wood. I had fabric swatches spread across the coffee table like a mosaic. "Leaving the office now," he said. I could hear the turn signal clicking in the background. "You need anything? Maybe that Thai place on—" "Just come home. 20 minutes. Drive safe. Always do." 23 minutes later, my phone rang again. Not Caleb. A number I didn't recognize. A woman's voice, calm, practiced. The tone of someone who delivers bad news for a living. "Mrs. Mercer? This is Vanderbilt University Medical Center. Your husband has been brought in following a motor vehicle accident. We need you to come in right away." I don't remember driving there. I remember the parking garage, the fluorescent lights buzzing. The smell, that hospital smell, bleach and recycled air and something underneath that you can't name, but your body recognizes as wrong. A doctor met me in the hallway. Young. Couldn't have been older than 30. He had blood on his left shoe. "Mrs. Mercer, I'm so sorry. Your husband suffered severe trauma in the collision. A commercial truck ran the intersection at Henderson and—" "Is he alive?" The pause told me before his mouth did. Caleb was 36 years old. The truck driver had a blood alcohol of 0.14. The light had been red for 7 seconds. They let me sit with him. His hand was still warm. I held it for 41 minutes before anyone asked me to leave. I counted every one. The funeral was 4 days later. Grace Community Church, the same church where Judith had introduced me as the daughter-in-law who couldn't produce a grandchild. 211 people signed the guest book. Partners from Caleb's old firm, employees from our company, clients who'd become friends, neighbors. The Thai restaurant owner from West End sent flowers with a note that said simply, "He always tipped 40%. Tessa handled everything I couldn't. Programs, flowers, the reception at our house afterward. She moved through the logistics with the same precision she brought to running our company. Quiet, thorough, one step ahead of every problem." Judith sat in the front pew. She cried. Real tears. I'll give her that. Whatever else Judith was, she loved her son. When she hugged me at the casket, it was the longest she'd ever held me, but even in that embrace, she whispered something that landed wrong. He deserved more time. He deserved so much. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I heard the word she swallowed. Children. He deserved children, even at his funeral. Marin arrived 20 minutes late. She wore black. But the dress was new. Fitted. The kind you buy for an event, not a burial. Fresh highlights. Red lipstick. She carried her son on her hip like an accessory. 14 months old, squirming in a little bow tie he kept trying to pull off. She walked straight to the casket. Past me, past Judith, past 200 people. She placed her hand flat on the polished oak and let out a sob so loud it echoed off the church ceiling. "He was the only one who truly understood me," she said, not whispering, speaking, loud enough for the first 6 rows to hear. Tessa appeared at my elbow. Her grip on my arm was the only thing keeping me upright. "What the hell was that?" Tessa breathed. I didn't answer. I was watching Marin after the service. She found Judith in the reception line and embraced her. Long, intimate, the kind of hug that claims ownership. She whispered something in Judith's ear. Judith pulled back, looked at Marin, then looked at the baby, then looked across the room at me. That look. I'll never forget it. Something clicking into place behind her eyes. Something she wanted to believe. Marin left before the reception ended. Didn't say goodbye to me. Didn't offer condolences. Didn't ask how I was. She buckled her son into his car seat, pulled out of the driveway, and was gone. 2 days later, the text came. Marin, 9:14 a.m. 7 words. "We need to talk about Caleb's estate." I stared at the screen. Read it 3 times. It involves my son. I set the phone down, picked it up, put it down again. Then, stupid, automatic, muscle memory, I opened my contacts and tapped Caleb's name. It rang once. Voicemail. You've reached Caleb Mercer. Leave me a message and I'll get back to you. I sat on the kitchen floor with the phone pressed to my ear and listened to his voice 4 times. The cadence. The slight smile you could hear at the end. The promise he couldn't keep. Then I read Marin's text again. And for the first time since the hospital, I didn't feel grief. I felt something colder. Something with edges. That afternoon, my phone rang. Not Marin. A 615 number I recognized from years of contract negotiations. Quinn, this is Owen Blackwell. A pause. I need to see you. Caleb left specific instructions with me, documents I was only to share with you after his passing. Can you come in tomorrow morning? I didn't sleep that night. I lay in our bed staring at the ceiling, Caleb's pillow still holding the shape of his head. My sister had sent me 7 words that made no sense, but Owen Blackwell had documents that Caleb wanted me to see. And I had a feeling, cold, certain, settling in my chest like a stone, that whatever was in those documents would change everything. Owen Blackwell's office smelled like old leather and paper. He handed me a folder and said, Caleb knew this day might come. He made sure you'd be ready. I opened it and understood why my husband had kept one secret from me. The office was in a converted brownstone on 2nd Avenue, the kind of building that whispered money without shouting it. Dark wood paneling, framed diplomas from Vanderbilt Law, a window overlooking the Cumberland that Caleb used to say was worth more than Owen's hourly rate, which was considerable. Owen was 61. Silver hair, reading glasses on a chain around his neck. The unhurried manner of a man who'd spent 30 years untangling other people's worst decisions. He'd been Caleb's mentor at his first firm, back before Caleb and I started our company. They'd stayed close. Owen handled our wills, our trusts, the corporate structure. Everything that required someone you'd trust with your life. He came around the desk to embrace me. Brief, firm. Sit down, Quinn. Can I get you something? I have bourbon. Caleb always said you were a bourbon woman. I almost smiled. Almost. It's 10 in the morning, Owen. It's been a hell of a month. He poured 2 glasses anyway. Set one in front of me. I didn't touch it. Then I did. Owen sat across from me and placed a leather folder on the desk between us. His expression was the kind you see on a doctor's face right before the word but. Caleb came to see me 14 months ago, Owen began, alone. He didn't tell me he was coming, just showed up on a Tuesday afternoon, sat in that same chair you're in now. And he told me something he hadn't told anyone, not even you. My fingers tightened around the glass. He'd gone to a specialist, Dr. Marcus Webb at Nashville Fertility Clinic. Quinn. Owen paused, choosing his words. Caleb was diagnosed with non-obstructive azoospermia. Complete absence of viable sperm. The condition was congenital. He'd had it his entire life. He could not father a child. The room went very quiet. I could hear the clock on Owen's bookshelf. Tick, tick, tick. I already knew. I'd known for 18 months, known that I was fine, which meant the problem was Caleb. But hearing it confirmed, clinical and final, in a dead man's lawyer's office, that was different. That made it real in a way my own suspicion never had. He was devastated, Owen continued. Not about the diagnosis itself, about what it meant for you, for his mother. He said, and I remember his exact words, if my mother finds out, she'll either blame Quinn for not telling her sooner, or she'll try to replace Quinn with someone she thinks can fix me. Either way, Quinn loses. That sounded exactly like Caleb. Thinking 3 moves ahead. Protecting me from angles I hadn't even considered. So he updated his will, Owen said, sliding the folder forward. Everything to you. The house, the company shares, the investment accounts, all of it. Properly notarized, filed with Davidson County Probate Court. Airtight. He tapped the folder. He also asked me to keep copies of his medical records and a personal letter. His instructions were explicit. I was only to give these to you in the event of his death, and only if circumstances required it. I opened the folder. The will was on top. Dense legal language, Caleb's signature at the bottom. Real this time. Familiar. The slight drag on the upstroke of the M, the way the final R trailed off like he was already thinking about the next thing. Beneath the will, Dr. Webb's diagnostic report. Clinical. Cold. Numbers and terminology that reduced my husband's most private anguish to data points on a page. And at the bottom, a sealed envelope. My name in Caleb's handwriting, the letters slightly uneven, which meant he'd written it fast. Caleb's handwriting got messy when he was emotional. I ran my thumb across the ink, pressed my lips together hard. Take your time, Owen said. He stood and walked to the window, giving me his back. A gentleman's privacy. I opened it. Caleb's voice poured off the page. Not the formal Caleb who signed contracts and reviewed balance sheets. The one who left sticky notes on the bathroom mirror. The one who sang off-key in the shower and thought I couldn't hear. He told me he was sorry for keeping the diagnosis from me. He said he'd found the appointment slip from my visit to Dr. Sandoval. It had fallen out of my coat pocket, and he'd understood immediately what it meant. That I'd gone alone. That I already knew the answer, but loved him enough not to say it. You carried my secret before I even knew I had one, he wrote. That's the kind of person you are, Quinn. That's why I need to make sure you're protected. He warned me about Marin. Not vaguely, specifically. He said that if anything ever happened to him, Marin might try to use a child to claim his estate. He didn't know how. He didn't know when. But he knew her. If Marin ever tries to claim anything using a child, remember, I couldn't give anyone a child. The science is absolute. The last line blurred behind my tears. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Protect what we built. Don't let them take it. I folded the letter, pressed it flat against my chest, held it there. Owen returned to his chair after a while. Quiet. Patient. He refilled my bourbon without asking. He anticipated this, I said finally. My voice sounded foreign. Scraped. He did. Caleb was nothing if not thorough. I wiped my eyes, set the letter down, picked up the bourbon instead. My sister sent me a text 2 days ago, said she needs to discuss Caleb's estate, said it involves her son. Owen's expression didn't change, but his hand stilled on the desk. Tell me everything. I told him about the text, about Marin at the funeral, the dress, the hand on the casket, the whisper to Judith, about the look in Judith's eyes when she glanced from the baby to me. Owen listened without interrupting. When I finished, he removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Here's what I recommend. Don't respond to Marin. Don't confront her. If she's planning what I think she's planning, the best thing you can do is let her commit to the lie completely. The deeper she goes, the harder it becomes to walk back. He leaned forward. I'm going to call Ray Callahan, former Nashville PD, now Private Investigations. He's discreet, thorough, and he owes me a favor. We need to know exactly what Marin is planning before she executes it. I drove home with Caleb's letter on the passenger seat, right where he used to sit. Tessa called as I pulled into the driveway. Company's fine. The Germantown project closed on schedule. The East Nashville Hotel wants to expand scope. Don't worry about any of it. Take whatever time you need. I've got the ship. Thank you, Tessa. Don't thank me. Just come back when you're ready. And Quinn? Yeah? Whatever's happening with your family, you're not alone in it. Remember that. I sat in the car after she hung up. Engine off. Caleb's letter in my hand. My sister thought she was about to take everything from me. She didn't know that my dead husband had already made sure she'd fail. But I still needed proof of what she was planning, and Ray Callahan was about to find something none of us expected. Ray Callahan sat across from me with a manila folder and a look that said he'd seen worse, but not by much. Your sister's been planning this since the day your husband died, he said. Maybe before. We were in Owen's conference room, the three of us around a mahogany table that had probably witnessed 100 ugly truths before mine. Ray was 54, built like a fire hydrant, with a flat-top haircut and hands that looked like they'd opened a lot of doors that people didn't want opened. He'd spent 22 years with Nashville PD before going private. He didn't smile much. I liked him immediately. Let's start with the finances, Ray said, opening the folder. Your sister is drowning. He laid it out piece by piece. Maren owed $83,000. 4 maxed credit cards. Capital One, Discover. 2 store cards she'd apparently opened at Nordstrom and Anthropology like they were lifelines. A personal loan from a payday lender at 29% interest. And the medical bills. $31,400 for her son's ear surgery at 3 months old. Insurance had covered part of it. She'd ignored the rest until it went to collections. Rent's 5 months behind, Ray continued. Her landlord filed an eviction notice last Tuesday. She has until the 30th to pay $7,200 or vacate. He slid a document across the table. Credit score, 489. Owen shook his head slowly. That's not someone making bad decisions. That's someone in freefall. It gets better. Ray produced a second stack of papers. The child's father, or the most likely candidate, is a bartender named Tyler Voss. Worked at a place on Broadway before Maren got pregnant. They split shortly after the birth. He moved to Knoxville with a new girlfriend. Pays about $200 a month in child support when he feels like it, which isn't often. He's got a warrant in Hamilton County for unpaid support on another kid in Chattanooga. So she's alone? I said, with a baby and $83,000 in debt. Alone and desperate. Ray's expression shifted. Which brings us to this. He laid printouts on the table, text messages, screenshots from Maren's phone. Obtained, Ray explained, through a mutual contact who'd been shown the messages by Maren's friend Jenna Torres, voluntarily. Jenna, apparently, had developed a conscience. The first message was sent the day after Caleb's funeral. Maren to Jenna. Caleb's dead and Quinn sitting on $12 million. That's my son's inheritance whether she likes it or not. Jenna. What are you talking about? Tyler is Aiden's dad. Maren. Nobody needs to know that. Caleb can't exactly deny it from a coffin. I set the paper down. Picked it up again. Read it once more to make sure the words were real. There's more, Ray said. Maren to Jenna, 4 days later. Mom's helping with the will. She found a guy who can copy signatures. His name's Kyle, does graphic design. $500, and he says it'll look legit. And then, the one that made Owen remove his glasses and set them on the table with a click. Quinn's too nice to fight. She'll fold in a week. I give her a son's first birthday party, a crowd, a few tears. She won't even ask questions. Ray watched my face as I read. Your mother's involvement is documented too. He placed one more printout in front of me. Lorraine to Maren, sent 10 days ago. Make sure the will looks professional. And don't mention Tyler. Say the baby is Caleb's. Judith already half believes it from all the visits. And then, 3 days later, your father doesn't know. Keep it that way. He'd never go along with this. Owen leaned back. Lorraine's direct involvement elevates this from opportunistic fraud to conspiracy. That's a Class C felony in Tennessee. 3 to 15 years. I stared at my mother's words on the screen. Make sure the will looks professional. My mother. The woman who used to braid my hair before school. Who taught me to drive in a Kroger parking lot. Who cried at my wedding. Or pretended to. She'd helped forge a dead man's will to steal from her own daughter. The forger, I said. My voice sounded calm. It didn't feel calm. Kyle. Ray nodded. Kyle Puckett. Freelance graphic designer. Works out of a co-working space in East Nashville. 26 years old. He pulled Caleb's signature from a charity auction form that was photographed and posted online 3 years ago. Charged Moran $500. Thinks the whole thing is a joke. Told a buddy at a bar that he'd made the easiest $500 of his life. Can we prove the will is forged? Owen asked. Already done. I had a forensic document examiner compare the signature on Marin's will with authenticated samples from your files. It's a competent copy, but the stroke pressure is wrong. The original was signed with a fountain pen. Kyle used a ballpoint. Owen looked at me. Quinn, we have everything we need. Medical records proving Caleb couldn't father a child. A legitimate will filed with the court. Text messages proving premeditation and conspiracy. A traceable forgery, and DNA. He paused. The DNA results. Have they come back? I'd almost forgotten. Ray had collected the sample 2 weeks ago, a pacifier from Aiden's diaper bag during one of my visits. Compared against Caleb's medical DNA profile from the fertility clinic. Ray pulled one last envelope from the folder, unsealed it, read silently, then looked up. 0 matching genetic markers. 0. The child shares no biological connection to Caleb Mercer. I took the paper, held it for a moment, then opened my bag and pulled out the blue binder I'd bought at Staples the night before. Caleb would have appreciated the color coding. I placed the DNA results inside, behind the medical records, behind the legitimate will, behind the text messages, behind Kyle Puckett's invoice, behind the forensic signature analysis. Everything in order. Everything documented. Everything ready. Owen studied me. What do you want to do? Wait, I said. She announced her lie at a birthday party. She'll push for something bigger. A family meeting? A legal confrontation? She wants an audience for her performance. I closed the binder. I want to be in that audience when the curtain falls. And if she doesn't escalate? She will. Marin always needs a stage. Owen nodded slowly. Then we wait. But Quinn, when the moment comes, you call me first. Not after. Before. I drove home with the blue binder on the passenger seat. Where Caleb's letter usually sat. 2 weapons now, side by side. His love and my evidence. 2 weeks later, the DNA results came back. And then my sister threw a birthday party. The one where she planned to announce her lie to the world. She had no idea I was already 3 steps ahead. But what happened at that party was worse than anything I'd prepared for. My sister chose her son's first birthday party to destroy my husband's name. 43 people heard her do it. And I stood there, holding the gift I'd bought for a nephew she was about to turn into a weapon. I almost didn't go. That morning, I sat on the edge of the bed for 20 minutes holding Caleb's letter, reading the last line over and over. Protect what we built. Owen had said to wait. Ray had said the evidence was ready. The blue binder was locked in my home office, complete and devastating. But the plan required Marin to go public first. To commit her lie in front of witnesses. So I had to be there. I had to stand in the blast radius and not flinch. Tessa picked me up at noon. She didn't know the details, only that something might happen. If it goes sideways, I told her in the car. I need you to remember everything, exactly what's said, exactly who's there. She looked at me for a long moment. Quinn, how bad is this going to be? Bad. The party was at Judith's house in Brentwood. The moment we pulled up, I knew this wasn't a 1-year-old's birthday. The driveway was lined with cars, at least 30. A catering van from a place in Green Hills that charged $40 a head. Valet parking. Valet parking for a toddler's party. Inside, the house was transformed. Blue and white balloons in clusters. A banner, "Happy First Birthday Aiden," stretched across the living room. A 3-tier cake that must have cost $300. And people. Everywhere. Not just family. Caleb's uncle Howard and his wife, 3 of Caleb's cousins, 2 former business partners, members of Judith's Bible study, neighbors. Marin's friend Jenna Torres hovering near the kitchen with an expression like she was waiting for a fire alarm. 43 people. I counted. This wasn't a party. It was a stage. I placed my gift on the table. A stuffed elephant I'd ordered from a shop in the Gulch, the kind with the baby's name embroidered on the ear. Aiden. I'd spent 20 minutes picking the thread color. That felt like a different lifetime now. My parents were already there. Dennis sat at the patio table looking like he wanted to be literally anywhere else. Lorraine stood near the dessert spread, laughing too loudly at something one of Judith's friends said. She saw me, and her smile tightened at the edges. "Quinn, honey, you came." She hugged me, held on a beat too long. "This will be good for you. Being around family." I let myself be hugged. Said nothing. Judith found me by the drink station. She was wearing a cream blazer and pearls, church clothes on a Saturday, which meant she'd dressed for an occasion bigger than cake and candles. She took both my hands. "Quinn, thank you for being here. I know this is difficult." Her grip was firm. Her eyes were bright, not grief bright. Excitement bright. She knew. Whatever Marin had planned, Judith was in on the timing. For 30 minutes, I circulated, accepted condolences from people who meant well and awkward silences from people who didn't know what to say. Held Aiden when Marin passed him to me so she could fix her lipstick. He grabbed my necklace and giggled. I kissed his forehead. "Whatever happens today, none of this is your fault, little man." Then Marin clinked a spoon against a champagne flute. The yard went quiet. 43 faces turned toward the patio where she stood. Aiden on her hip, the afternoon sun catching her freshly highlighted hair. She was wearing a black wrap dress. Not morning black. Power black. She looked like a woman about to give a keynote. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate my son's first birthday," she began. Her voice carried, practiced, steady, the cadence of someone who'd rehearsed in front of a mirror. "This past year has been full of challenges and secrets, and I can't carry mine any longer." My mother looked at her shoes. Judith leaned forward in her chair. "Aiden's father." Marin paused. Let the silence build. "Is Caleb Mercer." The gasp moved through the crowd like a wave. I felt it. The collective intake of breath, the shifting of bodies, the heads turning toward me. Howard Mercer's wife put her hand over her mouth. Dennis stared at Lorraine. Lorraine stared at the ground. Marin's eyes found mine across the yard, held them. Caleb and I had a relationship 2 years ago. It was brief, a moment of weakness for both of us. But it gave us this beautiful boy. She bounced Aiden on her hip. He grabbed a fistful of her hair, oblivious. Before Caleb died, he updated his will to provide for his son. She reached into her bag and produced the document, held it up like evidence in a courtroom. Judith stood, crossed to Marin, took the paper, read it, then turned to the crowd with the expression of a woman who'd just been proven right about everything she'd ever suspected. "I knew it," she said. Her voice broke, but not with grief, with triumph. "I always knew there was something about this child. He has Caleb's jaw. A grandmother knows." She took Aiden from Marin's arms, held him against her chest, pressed her lips to his hair. Then she looked at me. The will states that 80% of Caleb's estate, the house, the company shares, the investments, should go to his biological son. That's nearly $10 million, Quinn. Her voice hardened. You need to do the right thing. Howard Mercer stood. If that boy is Caleb's, the family has an obligation. A murmur of agreement rippled through the Mercer relatives. Judith's Bible study friends exchanged knowing glances. That poor girl. Raised his child alone. And the wife didn't even know. Lorraine appeared at my side, her hand on my arm, her mouth close to my ear. Just agree, honey. Don't make a scene. You'll still have plenty. And then Maren leaned in. Close enough that only I could hear. You couldn't give him a baby in 4 years. I gave him a son in one night. I looked at her. At the manicured confidence, the rehearsed tears drying on her cheeks, the calculated cruelty dressed up as confession, and I felt it. That laugh threatening to rise. The same absurd, inappropriate laughter that comes when something is so outrageously, spectacularly false that your body doesn't know what else to do. I pressed my lips together, swallowed it. May I see the will? I asked. Calm. Even. Maren handed it over. I scanned it for 10 seconds. The language was wrong. The signature was close, but the pressure was off. Ballpoint, not fountain pen. Kyle Puckett's $500 masterpiece. I folded it, handed it back. Thank you for telling me, Maren. I need some time to process this. Her face flickered. Confusion. She'd expected tears. Collapse. Maybe a scream. Not composure. That's it? She said. For now. I set my cup on the table, found Tessa by the gate. We walked to the car without looking back. Behind us, 43 people watched me leave. The party was over. Nobody touched the 3-tier cake. In the car, Tessa drove. I sat in the passenger seat. Silent. 3 minutes passed. Please tell me you have a plan, Tessa said. I took out my phone, called Owen Blackwell. They did it. In front of 43 people, start preparing everything. I had 43 witnesses to a forged will, a false paternity claim, and a dead man's reputation being destroyed at a baby's birthday party. Maren thought my silence meant surrender. Judith thought she'd won, but I wasn't quiet because I was weak. I was quiet because every word they said was another nail in their own coffin. And they had no idea what was coming. Within 72 hours of the birthday party, I lost 11 clients. Judith's attorney sent a formal demand letter, and my mother called to say I was being selfish. Maren moved fast. The Facebook post went up Sunday morning. No names, but transparent enough that anyone in Nashville's design community could connect the dots. Some people would rather keep millions than support a fatherless child. My son lost his dad before he could walk. All I'm asking for is what his father wanted him to have. Pray for us. 847 reactions by Monday night. 312 comments. Shares I stopped counting after 60. The post spread through every design circle, church group, and neighborhood page in Davidson County like poison through a water supply. Monday morning, Tessa called me at 7 a.m. We lost the Franklin Hotel project. They emailed at 6, said they're going in a different direction. And the Thompson Group pushed their contract to indefinite hold. That's 3 this morning, Quinn. I've got 8 more voicemails I haven't opened yet. By Friday, 11 clients gone, 3 outright cancellations, 8 indefinite postponements that meant the same thing. Monthly revenue down 40%. 2 employees asked Tessa, not me, Tessa, whether the company was stable. Maren hadn't accused me of anything directly. She didn't need to. She'd painted herself as a grieving single mother and let the internet do the rest. In the comments, so sad. Praying for you and your angel baby. Some people have no shame. One woman, A stranger wrote, "I hope you get every penny that baby deserves." Then came the letter. Gerald Forsyth, attorney at law. Retained by Judith Mercer. 3 pages of legal language demanding I transfer 80% of Caleb's estate, valued at $9.92 million, into a trust for Caleb Mercer's biological son, Aidan Holloway, within 30 days. Failure to comply would result in formal litigation in Davidson County Probate Court. I read it at the kitchen table, set it down next to Caleb's mug, still on the counter, still unwashed. The demand letter and the mug side by side. The lie and the truth. Owen called that afternoon. Gerald Forsyth is competent but cautious. He took this case because Judith's paying his retainer. He hasn't verified the will independently. If he had, he would have walked away already. He's operating on Judith's word. So he doesn't know it's forged. Not yet. He will. Then my mother called. I let it ring 4 times. Answered on the 5th. "Quinn, honey." Lorraine's voice. That specific tone she used when she wanted something to sound reasonable. "I've been thinking about this, and I really believe the best thing for everyone is to just resolve this quietly. Resolve it. Give Marin what she's asking for. You'll still have $2 million, Quinn. That's more than most people see in a lifetime. Don't be greedy." The word landed like a slap. Greedy. I'd built a company from a second bedroom. I'd worked 16-hour days for 8 years. I'd designed hotel lobbies and restaurant interiors and corporate offices, while my sister maxed out credit cards at Anthropology, and my mother was calling me greedy. "Mom, she's lying." "She's your sister. She wouldn't lie about something like this." "She would. She is. And you know she is? Because you helped her." Silence. 3 seconds. 4. "I don't know what you're talking about," Lorraine said. But her voice had changed. Thinner. The way it got when I was 12 and caught her eating the last of my Halloween candy. "Judith is prepared to go to court," Lorraine continued, recovering. "She has money for lawyers. Do you really want to fight your dead husband's family in public? Think about what Caleb would want." I closed my eyes, pressed the phone against my ear until it hurt. "I know exactly what Caleb would want, Mom. Better than anyone." I hung up, sat in the kitchen for 11 minutes. Then Ray Callahan knocked on my door. He had one envelope. Manila. Unsealed. We stood in the foyer. He didn't even take off his coat. "DNA results," he said. Compared the sample from the child's pacifier against Caleb's medical profile from the fertility clinic. He handed it to me. I pulled out the single page. "0 matching genetic markers," Ray said. 0. Not his son. Not even close. I held the paper for a long moment, then walked to my office, unlocked the desk drawer and placed it in the blue binder. Last page. Final piece. The binder was heavy now. Everything inside it. Medical records, legitimate will, text messages, forensic analysis, Kyle Puckett's trail, DNA results, Caleb's letter. Months of preparation, a dead man's foresight, a private investigator's legwork, a wife's patience. Ray watched me close the binder. What now? Now we wait for the invitation. It came the next morning. Owen called at 9:15. Judith scheduled a family meeting for Saturday at her house. Extended family, Caleb's former business partners. She wants you there to discuss the matter civilly. Her words. Gerald Forsyth will be present with transfer documents. Tell her I'll be there. Quinn, that's her territory. That's exactly why it has to be there. She needs to feel safe right up until the moment she isn't. If you've ever had someone try to use your own grief against you, hit that subscribe button. Because what happened at that family meeting, I still can't believe I had the nerve to do it. But Caleb's letter was in my pocket. And I wasn't going alone. Saturday morning. I stood in front of the mirror in the bedroom Caleb and I had shared for 4 years. I put on the black blazer I'd worn to his funeral. I slipped his letter into my inside pocket, right over my heart. I picked up the blue binder, and I drove to Judith Mercer's house for the last time. Judith Mercer arranged 26 chairs in her living room like a courtroom. She sat at the head, judge, jury, and executioner. She had no idea she was about to be the defendant. I arrived at 10:58 a.m. Owen Blackwell walked beside me, briefcase in hand. Tessa was 2 steps behind. Judith opened the door herself. Cream blazer again, pearls again, the uniform of a woman who believed she was running the show. "Quinn, thank you for being reasonable about this." She glanced at Owen. "I wasn't aware you were bringing an attorney." "I wasn't aware you were bringing 28 people to a family discussion." The living room was full, Howard Mercer and his wife in the front row. 3 cousins, 2 of Caleb's former business partners, men I'd worked with for years, now sitting in Judith's chairs looking uncomfortable. Members of the Bible study, neighbors. And in the corner, Marin, Aiden on her lap, wearing a soft blue sweater that matched the balloons from the birthday party. Lorraine sat beside her. Dennis sat 3 chairs away from Lorraine, arms crossed, staring at the wall. Gerald Forsyth stood by the fireplace with a leather folder. He nodded at Owen, professional courtesy between men who'd be on opposite sides before the hour was up. Judith took her position at the head of the room, stood, addressed the crowd like she was opening a church service. "Thank you all for coming. This is a family matter, and I want it resolved today. As many of you know, my son Caleb fathered a child before his passing. Marin has shown us the will, and Gerald will explain the legal path forward." Gerald placed transfer documents on the coffee table in front of my chair. The paper was heavy, expensive, 80%, $9.92 million, 1 signature line at the bottom. "Mrs. Mercer," Gerald said, "this can be resolved amicably today. Otherwise, we'll proceed with formal litigation." I looked at the document, didn't touch it. "Before I sign anything," I said, "I'd like to ask Marin a few questions. In front of everyone, since she made her announcement in front of everyone." Judith nodded. "That's fair." I turned to my sister. She was bouncing Aiden gently on her knee, her face arranged into an expression of brave vulnerability. She'd practiced it. I could tell because her left eye didn't quite match her right. It never did when she was performing. "When did your relationship with Caleb begin?" "About 2 years ago. Summer." "Where did you meet?" "A hotel. Downtown. The Hermitage." "Which room?" "A flicker." I don't remember the exact number." "How often did you see each other?" "A few times." "What did Caleb order for breakfast the morning after?" "He was very particular about breakfast." "Why does that matter?" "It matters because you're claiming you slept with my husband. Details matter, Marin, unless there are no details to remember." Murmurs. Howard's wife shifted in her seat. Gerald Forsyth uncrossed his arms. I opened the blue binder. "Owen." Owen stood. Set the legitimate will on the coffee table beside Gerald's transfer documents. The contrast was immediate. Gerald's paperwork looked like a costume next to the real thing. "This is Caleb Mercer's actual last will and testament," Owen said. "Notarized, properly executed, and filed with Davidson County Probate Court 14 months ago. I personally witnessed his signature. It leaves everything to his wife." He paused. "The document Ms. Holloway presented is a forgery, created by a freelance graphic designer named Kyle Puckett for $500. A forensic document examiner has confirmed the signature was copied from a charity auction form using a ballpoint pen. Caleb signed documents exclusively with a fountain pen." Gerald Forsyth picked up the legitimate will. "Read it. Turn to the forged one. Read that." Then slowly closed his leather folder, removed his glasses, and turned to Judith. Mrs. Mercer, I was not informed the will I was presented with might be fraudulent. I'm withdrawing from this matter immediately. He walked out of the room. The front door opened and closed. Nobody stopped him. Judith's mouth opened. Gerald. Wait. Gone. Marin's bouncing stopped. Aiden grabbed at her necklace. She didn't notice. I placed 2 documents on the coffee table. This is my fertility report from 18 months ago. Nashville Women's Clinic. Dr. Nina Sandoval. I set it down gently. Completely normal. No issues. I can have children. Then the second. This is Caleb's. Nashville Fertility Clinic. Dr. Marcus Webb. 14 months ago. I let the silence hold for one breath. 2. Non-obstructive azoospermia. Complete absence of viable sperm. Caleb was infertile. He could not father a child. The room stopped breathing. Not with me. Not with Marin. Not with anyone. I looked at Judith. Directly. The way she'd looked at me across 100 family dinners, measuring, judging, finding me insufficient. You spent 4 years telling me I was the problem, Judith. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, Facebook posts, books about fertility wrapped in silver paper. You told your Bible study I was damaged. You told Darlene Patterson that my past was catching up with me. 4 years. Judith's hand was flat on the armrest. Her knuckles were white. But the truth is, your son couldn't have children. He knew. He found out 14 months ago and he kept it secret. My voice didn't waver. You want to know why? Because he thought if you found out, you'd love him less. Judith made a sound. Not a word. A sound. Low, involuntary, like something cracking behind her ribs. And the saddest part? I said quietly. He was right, wasn't he? Howard Mercer put his hand over his face. I turned back to the room. But we're not done. I read 2 text messages aloud. Marin to Jenna. Quinn's too nice to fight. She'll fold in a week. Then Lorraine to Marin. Make sure the will looks professional, and don't mention Tyler. Dennis stood up. His chair scraped against the hardwood. He looked at Lorraine, his wife of 34 years, with an expression I'd never seen on my father's face before. It wasn't anger. It was something past anger. You told me you didn't know about any of this. Dennis, sit down. You lied to me. You helped her forge a dead man's will to steal from our daughter. He walked out of the room. The front door opened and closed for the second time. Lorraine's face collapsed. She pressed both hands over her mouth, and the sound that came out was muffled and wet and ugly. One last page. DNA results, I said. Collected independently, compared against Caleb's medical profile. I set it on the table. 0 matching genetic markers. 0. Aiden is not Caleb Mercer's son. Marin broke. Not gracefully. Not like the movies. Her face crumpled inward, and she turned on Lorraine with a voice that cracked open like a dropped plate. You said this would work. You said she'd never find out. Don't you dare blame me. It was your idea. You found Kyle. You wrote the script. Aiden started crying. The sound cut through the room. Sharp, confused, a 1-year-old who didn't understand why his mother was shaking. Howard Mercer stood. His voice was the quietest thing in the room. Both of you, stop. You've disgraced this family enough. Owen stepped forward. For the record, I've filed the forged will and all supporting evidence with the Davidson County District Attorney's Office. Ms. Holloway and Ms. Lorraine Holloway are facing potential charges for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. Mr. Kyle Puckett has been separately reported. Marin stared at Owen, then at me. Her mouth moved, but nothing came out. Judith hadn't moved. She sat in her chair at the head of the room, the position she'd chosen because it felt powerful, and she stared at the medical report on the table. Her son's name, The diagnosis. The date. 14 months before he died, her son had sat in a clinic and learned the truth about himself, and he hadn't told her. Because he was afraid of her. I stood, picked up the blue binder. Empty now. Every document laid across Judith's coffee table like evidence at a trial. I looked at Marin, at Lorraine, at Judith. You spent 4 years calling me broken. Turns out the only broken thing in this family was your lie. I walked out of Judith Mercer's house for the last time. Behind me, Marin screaming at Lorraine, Aiden crying, Howard's voice trying to restore order to a room that had none left. And Judith, motionless in her chair, staring at a piece of paper that had undone everything she believed about her son, her family, and herself. I got into my car, placed Caleb's letter on the passenger seat, started the engine. I did not look back. The dominoes fell faster than I expected. Within a week, 3 people had been served papers, 1 marriage was over, and my mother called me 17 times. I answered on the 18th. But first, the fallout. Owen filed everything with the Davidson County DA on Monday morning. By Wednesday, the investigation was open. Kyle Puckett, the 26-year-old graphic designer who'd called it the easiest $500 of his life, was the first to fold. He gave a full statement within 2 hours of being contacted, handing over his laptop, the original Photoshop files, text messages from Marin, and a Venmo receipt for $500 with the memo line, document work. He spelled document wrong. Marin was served Thursday afternoon. Forgery, fraud, conspiracy, Class C and D felonies in Tennessee. Her court-appointed attorney called Owen that evening to discuss a plea deal before the ink on the charges was dry. Lorraine was served Friday morning. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Dennis had already filed for divorce. 34 years of marriage dissolved in a 1-page petition that cited irreconcilable differences. The lawyer told Owen it was the fastest filing he'd processed in 20 years. Dennis had apparently walked from Judith's house to his car, driven to a Holiday Inn on Murfreesboro Road, and called an attorney from the parking lot. Judith was not charged. She hadn't known the will was forged. She'd been manipulated by Marin and Lorraine, as deliberately as I had, just from a different angle. But the absence of criminal charges didn't spare her from consequence. Gerald Forsyth sent a formal letter withdrawing representation and recommending she seek independent counsel regarding her role in the matter. Her Bible study group went quiet. 2 neighbors who'd been at the family meeting stopped returning her calls. The Whisper network of Brentwood, the same machine that had carried Judith's judgment of me for 4 years, turned on her overnight. 2 weeks after the meeting, Judith called. I was sitting on the porch. Evening. The light was doing that thing it does in Nashville in late autumn. Gold and amber. The maples on our street blazing like they were trying to outdo each other. Caleb used to call it the show-off hour. The phone buzzed. Judith's name. I let it ring 3 times. Quinn. Her voice was different, smaller, like someone had let the air out of it. I need to say something to you. I know I have no right to ask you to listen. I said nothing. Waited. I was wrong. About everything. About you. About Caleb. A long pause. My son couldn't have children. And instead of helping him, instead of even asking, I blamed you. I made your life miserable because I couldn't accept that my boy wasn't. She didn't finish the sentence. I let the silence sit for 7 seconds. He didn't tell you because he thought you'd love him less, Judith. Would you have? The longest pause of the conversation. I don't know. Her voice cracked. And that's the worst answer I've ever given. At least it's honest, I said. That's a first. I didn't forgive her. I didn't invite her over. I didn't close the door completely either. I need time, Judith. A lot of it. Don't call again until I call you. She said okay. And she didn't call. Marin took the plea deal in December. 3 years probation, 200 hours of community service, restitution of $500 to cover the forgery cost, mandatory therapy, mandatory financial counseling, a felony on her record that would follow her for life. Through Owen, I established an education trust for Aiden, $50,000, managed by a third-party fiduciary. Marin couldn't touch it. The money would cover preschool, medical needs, and eventually college. There were conditions. Marin had to maintain employment, complete therapy, and allow quarterly check-ins from a social worker. Not for her, I told Owen when he asked why. For him. He didn't choose his mother. Tessa's voice came through my office door on a Tuesday in January. Knocking twice. Her signature. Revenue report Q4 final. She set it on my desk. We're up 15% over pre-scandal numbers. 3 new contracts. The Franklin Hotel came back. She paused. Turns out people respect a woman who fights back with a blue binder. That night, I washed Caleb's mug. The one with the cracked Vanderbilt logo that had sat on the counter since the night he died. 4 months of dried espresso. I ran warm water over it. Used the soft sponge, not the rough one. Dried it with the kitchen towel he'd bought at the state fair. The one with the banjo-playing armadillo that he thought was hilarious. I put it in the cabinet. Top shelf. Next to the good glasses we used for company. Not forgotten. Just at rest. Dennis called the next morning. The first time in 33 years that my father had called me directly. Not through Lorraine. Not as a speakerphone afterthought. I should have said something years ago, he said, about your mother, about Marin, about all of it. I was a coward. Yes, I said. You were. I know. Silence. But you walked out of that room, Dad. That counted for something. The legal battles would take months. The family fractures might take years to settle, if they ever did. But for the first time since Caleb died, I slept through the night. And in the morning, the cabinet door was still closed. The mug was still inside. And the house was quiet in a way that didn't feel empty anymore. Just still. 6 months after the family meeting, I stood in front of a building with Caleb's name on it. And for the first time in a very long time, I smiled and meant it. The Caleb Mercer Center for Arts Education occupied a converted warehouse in the Nations, a neighborhood Caleb and I had scouted years ago for a client who never pulled the trigger. I'd bought the building 3 months after his death, gutted it myself with Tessa's help, and a crew of contractors who gave me a discount when they heard what it was for. Scholarships for design students who couldn't afford school. The kind of kids Caleb and I had been. Talented, broke, too stubborn to quit. The ribbon cutting drew 112 people. Partners, employees, friends. The Thai restaurant owner from West End brought spring rolls and a card. He always tipped 40%. This is his 40% back to the world. Tessa stood beside me with scissors that were comically oversized. He'd be insufferable right now, she said, grinning like an idiot. He'd say something about the font on the sign. He'd be right. The kerning is off. We laughed, both of us, and for the first time, laughing didn't feel like betrayal. Marin was 7 months into her probation, working reception at a dental practice in Antioch. Steady, boring, exactly what she needed. Therapy twice a month. She hadn't contacted me. The terms were clear. I'd reach out when I was ready. She was learning for the first time in 27 years that other people's timelines weren't hers to control. Aiden was too. Healthy, loud, obsessed with trucks. I saw him every other Saturday through an arrangement managed by a social worker named Grace, which felt like the kind of coincidence Caleb would have pointed out. He called me Auntie Q, and it undid me every time. Last visit, we sat on the floor of his daycare and built a Lego tower that he knocked down 11 times. Each time, he looked at me with pure delight. Again? Each time, I rebuilt it. Judith sent a Christmas card, handwritten. 3 words. I'm sorry. Truly. I set it on the bookshelf beside our wedding photo. I didn't write back. Not yet. Dennis and I met for breakfast once a month at a diner on Gallatin Road, the kind with sticky menus and bottomless coffee. He didn't say much. He showed up. For now, that was enough. On a Tuesday morning in April, I sat on the wraparound porch of our Belmead Craftsman. Coffee, spring light. The dogwoods Caleb had planted the year we moved in were blooming. White blossoms against dark branches. Absurdly beautiful. The way things are when they don't know anyone's watching. I took Caleb's letter from the nightstand drawer where it had lived for months. I'd read it 47 times. I knew every word, every ink smudge, every place where his handwriting got messy because his heart was moving faster than his hand. I folded it carefully, slipped it into a glass frame, set it on the shelf beside our wedding photo and Judith's card. Not hidden, not carried, just kept. Caleb once told me the strongest thing a person can do is choose who they protect, even when it costs them everything. He chose me, and when it was my turn, I chose him right back. People ask me if I'll ever let Judith back into my life, the woman who made me feel worthless for 4 years, but who also raised the man I loved more than anyone on this earth. I still don't have an answer. Would you? If this story stayed with you, if you've ever had to protect someone's memory from the people who should have honored it, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe. I'll be back soon. Take care of yourselves, and take care of each other.